This House is in session.
Committal papers.
Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Mike, please, Mike.
This should be automatic. Mr. Speaker, I am commanded to lay the Public Service Qualifications Amendment Order 2021.
Revert to government business.
Prior to the suspension of this Honorable Chamber yesterday, this Honorable Chamber was continuing the debate of the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2021 to 2022. We shall now return to such.
This House is now in standing Finance Committee.
Madam Chair. Head 82, Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification, in the amount of $39,690,227.
Honorable Minister.
Pleasant good morning to you, Madam Chair, and all my August colleagues and distinguished guests. First, let me introduce the team from the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. To my right, to your left, obviously, is the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Daphne Kelman, Mr. Steve Devonish, Director of the Natural Heritage Department, Ms. Lisa St. House, Deputy Director, Environmental Protection Department, Mr. Travis Sinclair, Senior Environmental Officer, Policy Planning, Research and Information, Ms. Kim Downs-Yearyard, Senior Environmental Officer, Biodiversity. Mr. Nigel Jones is the Senior Environmental Officer, Senior Technical Officer, for the National Botanical Garden. Ms. Tora Lord, Solid Waste Management Coordinator, Project Management Coordinating Unit. Mr. Ron Goodridge, the Environmental Officer, Climate Change and Ozone Protection. Mr. Ramon Aline, our Chairman at the Sanitation Service Authority. Ms. Janice Jones, who is the Manager, Sanitation Service Authority, and Mr. Ryan Alves, General Manager of the National Conservation Commission, and of course, Mr. Rohan Payne, the Assistant Project Coordinator of Biodiversity. Let me first of all welcome all my staff and thank them for being here this morning. I also want to pay homage today to my colleague, Minister Bostic, who is working assiduously in the fight, recognizing, of course, that this is a year to date since we had our first case of COVID-19. And it's important and significant for me to be here in the well today because prior to this first case and the vagaries of COVID-19, the entire conversation that the world was having was the environment and our response to climate change and natural disasters and the global warming as we know it. I want to say today that the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification stands as the protector of the environment and to ensure that the vagaries and the idiosyncrasies that confront us in terms of global warming and climate change, that we are able to mitigate, resist certainly, and to adapt to these challenges. And there are two dimensions basically to the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. There is the international dimension, which speaks to our international commitment across the board. And we are signatory to a number of conventions. We signed the Paris Agreement, of course, and through the United Nations framework and the Convention on Climate Change, we are able to augment our policies and our programs because inadvertently there are COPs, which is the Conference of Parties, that we are party to every single year, and this allows Barbados not only to have the technical and scientific knowledge, but also to be able to assess much needed climate finds. It is my desire to one day be able to say that this ministry has a measure of independence where we are able to punch above our weight in the international sphere, where Barbados is able to garner climate funds from throughout the world because they see us as the leaders and the country that is able to chart the new direction as far as it relates to protecting our environment. Of course, we are also signatory to the Basel Convention, which speaks to the movement of hazardous waste across the borders and in terms of transshipment. And our Environmental Protection Department is responsible for that. The Rotterdam Convention, which speaks to the chemicals and the amount of pesticides that we use in the environment, of course recognizing that those pesticides can lead to the greenhouse gas and the damage to the ozone layer. So, of course, we have we are signatory to that convention as well as the Stockholm Convention, which speaks to the persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, as they are called. And of course, the Biological Diversity Department has a relationship and a signatory to the CITES, which looks at the trade on endangered species. It is the Convention for the Trade of Endangered Species, recognizing that biodiversity must form an important part of the conversation as it relates to our fight against these vagaries of climate change and natural disasters. We had the Latin America, the Forum of Latin America and the Caribbean only recently, and one of the things that were exposed across the length and breadth of the conversation was the fact that we must find natural-based solutions, and including biodiversity, and ways how we can preserve that which is natural in order to fight these climate change and the disasters. So we are also signatory in this ministry to the Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention, which looks at the ozone-depleting substances. And there are a lot of ozone-depleting substances, but we recognize, of course, that the major greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, but you also have a duty to ensure that the refrigerants that are used in Barbados, the gases, the chlorofluorocarbons and gases used in the industry, whether it is car air conditioning, whether it is room air conditioning, that those refrigerants are taken care of in terms of disposal so they're not exposed to the atmosphere and damage the ozone layer. So from the international perspective, I'm saying that Barbados is doing very well, and we are ensuring that we have a voice and a space as it relates to protecting our environment and to ensure that we are able to commit to our Paris Agreement by ensuring that our temperatures remain less than 1.2 degrees Celsius. And we are working tirelessly to ensure that this happens. We are already in preparation to inform the COP26, which is going to be held later in this year, about our national determined contribution. And this has an interministerial connection because there are a lot of ministries that are involved in this whole fight in terms of reducing our carbon footprint. At the domestic level, and this is where it gets exciting for me, there is a new axis in this ministry that every single department hinges on in a circular way, and that is the Clean and Green Project. A project which basically will change the way of life and the aesthetics of Barbados. I am lucky to have in my ministry the Sanitation Service Department, which is responsible for cleaning the entire country. I believe that Barbados must be the cleanest country in the Western Hemisphere. And then, along with cleaning, we have the greening component. And the greening component speaks directly to an international trust to have trees as a part of the carbon sink. It is known, it is scientific knowledge that we have the forestry acts as a green carbon sink because it's able to take about 25% of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In the ocean, you have the phytoplankton, and they're taking about 25%. 50% remains active in the atmosphere, and that is what causes the damage to the ozone and the other environment. What we are saying is that the Clean and Green Project allows Barbados to reach this noble goal of planting 1 million trees. I said already when I planted the jacaranda tree in the botanical garden that I will plant 1,000,001 because of the ability for the forestry to act as a carbon sink and to sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, that dangerous greenhouse gas that is destroying our way of life. That is what I said. So what do we do in this program? We clean the entire country with the Sanitation Service Authority. As part of the important component of the program is that in communities where there are these unseemly refuse hubs, these anesthetically looking refuse communityscapes, we are changing them to a proper refuse hub so that the communities will have a refuse place to put their garbage, and that it can look nice and aesthetic, and it can bring out the beauty in Barbados. I said already, and I will repeat. It makes no sense having an iconic song. We have iconic people called Beautiful, Beautiful Barbados, sing by an iconic group, and Barbados is not idyllic. Absolutely makes no sense. It is my quiet and unreserved determination to make Barbados the most beautiful place in the Western Hemisphere. So, as I said, there is the cleaning component, which speaks to the sanitation. We come in and we do the bulk waste in communities, and through the community engagement program, because we believe that Barbados must have a sense of ownership in this program. They must have a sense of altruism. They must work in collaboration with government, because partnership is an important cog of any sustainable development. And we are saying, as part of a sustainable development plan, people must be part of that journey. So we have the community garbage pickup, and that is done bulk waste collection through the sanitation. After that, our biodiversity unit goes into the area and see what is there to preserve in a biological space. Because biodiversity speaks to what happens with living organisms in a geographical space and how we can preserve those things that are important to us right now. I have spoken already, and my colleagues will laugh when I talk about the Philodactylus pulcher or the big lizards that we see walking around. But they are an important part of our biodiversity, not only in terms of the regurgitation of the soil, but they are able to remove that one pest that causes havoc, and it causes just as much life as COVID-19, and that is the mosquito, which causes a lot of mosquito-borne disease, dengue, as we know it. And I'm saying is that these lizards are able to eat the egg of the leaves of the trees. The frogs, as we know, I don't know the last time that we see polywalls running around Barbados. Those things that would make people strange are the things that are part of our biological space. And I'm saying that we have to preserve them. Our natural fauna and flora, the trees that are important in terms of how they protect us from the pests. I said already, and the NCC has started a propagation exercise where they are looking at from the citronella grass back down to the pear-tree trees, which are natural mosquito repellents. We are looking at rosemary, we are looking at basil, we are looking at lavender, and all those things have biological purposes. And that's why I said, and I'm happy today to report to the entire country that we have a biological diverse action plan, which we will roll out the next couple of years to preserve our natural fauna and flora. So that is an interesting aspect of the Clean and Green project. Then there is the community engagement, because we have the community engagement exercise where our project management unit is allowed to engage Barbadians at the level of reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover, and no repair. Because I'm sure, Madam Chair, that when you had a skirt, when you were a young girl, you were able to repair it and reuse it. And that is the type of circular Barbados that we are talking. So the 5 R's must become an important part of the conversation of Barbadians. It must be the new tenets that seek to augment the way how we live in a circular Barbados. So that is an important part of the project. And then, of course, it is the National Conservation coming in with the dendrologists and all the specialists to see how we will beautify that particular area, whether it is whether we are putting parks in the area, whether we are putting a natural area for exercise, whether it is for the psychosocial aspect of greening, because we believe that Barbados right more than ever must have a psychosocial space to balance their humours. And that is basic medicine. You are a doctor, Madam Chair, you know that better than me. But we are creating these green spaces. We are changing the landscape of Barbados. And of course, I cannot finish my conversation and my preamble unless I talk about the National Botanical Garden, a natural oasis. We are going to bring to this country the most beautiful oasis in the entire Western Hemisphere with the National Botanical Garden. Along with the trees that we are going to plant, to sequester the carbon dioxide, we are going to have medicinal gardens. We are going to have ornamental gardens. There are going to be areas in the garden which is going to be specific for the indigenous plants in the area. It's going to be an area where the elderly can come in the twilight of their years and relax. Those in the dawn of their years, the children can come and learn about taxonomy, because we are going, right now as I speak, we are putting the blocks on the taxonomy center, because we understand that classification is an important part of the conversation going forward. The germplasm, how we treat the genetic material to inform how we plant trees, the timing that we plant them, and how we are able to resist against all the diseases from the biospheric fungi to the, or the types of fungi and bacteria that is known to affect the our trees and our tree stock. And then, of course, there is the herbarium, which looks at the dry leaves in order to be able to study the etiology of plants and so forth. This is the type of science that we are applying to our National Conservation Unit, and to ensure that we have a green space and that we are able to meet our commitments. We are right now, we have approved certainly the master plan for the botanical garden, and we are in the process of building out the roadwork and utilities and what we call the amphitheater, which is going to be an entertainment center of excellence in the botanical garden. You have seen some activities according to where you are standing geographically, on the left or the right side of the botanical garden. What you're saying in terms of the removal of the River Tamlin, and that's how we're talking circular Barbados. We are removing the River Tamlin from the most eastern side, if you're looking the area of town. And this River Tamlin is now being used by the factory, by Portville factory, as a source of biofuel. And we are saying that we are clearing that aspect to make that an international garden. The time is right in Barbados for us to be able to say that we are selling our country as an international green space, where the tourists can come and understand the whole principle and concepts of international greening. How they can be able to plant a tree, nurture that tree, and be responsible for adopting that tree. So it's an adopt the tree principle. It is
I remember you have a minute left.
I was now getting started. It was, so we are now having that type of conversation in terms of having the international committee, because there are a lot of countries that want to invest. They're happy about what Barbados is doing to transform the lives and to have a green economic recovery. So they're interested in buying into the whole notion of having a green botanical space. So that's what you have in the international garden to build out. My friends, this ministry is going to do every single thing that is humanly possible to ensure that Barbadians are protected in the environment, that this little sphere called Barbados will be recognized as the most beautiful country in the Western Hemisphere, that we are able to have a green economic consciousness, and that, in the not too distant future, that this ministry will now have a sense of independence, where because of what we are doing on the ground, from our indoor air qualities to every single thing we are doing, that the international community will say to Barbados, we are with you in this exercise and this journey. We understand your cause, and we are willing to put not only the technical support, but the funding. With those few words, Madam Chair, I'm obliged.
Please move the head.
And I wish to move that head 82 Stamp Park.
Thank you. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I welcome the presentation of the Honourable Minister and the presence of esteemed support of him and the policies of the Ministry as indicated in the estimates document. You know, I salute the Minister for his obvious zeal. He was effusive in his enthusiasm and passion about this work. And I'm happy to see that. I trust that he can be sustained in that way. And he took a bit of time to present. I'm therefore not going to be that long. I'm going to get quickly to my questions, if you would, Madam Chair. He did say he intended to make the botanical gardens the best in the world, or the Western Hemisphere, or whatever. I've heard that before, and the last voice from whom I heard that is no longer speaking with any kind of zeal or enthusiasm on those matters. the Prime Minister didn't indicate the need or desire to plant 1 million trees. And the last voice that spoke to those things said he would plant 2 million, and that voice is no longer heard. I noticed that the minister was a bit more conservative. He's going to plant just 1,000,001, so he should be able to survive. Having said that, Madam Speaker, let me get serious now and say a couple of things. Now, I want to quote Madam Chair from the National Strategic Plan of Barbados 2005 to 2025, which in part says, under the goal of strengthening the physical infrastructure and preserving the environment at the same time, one of the objectives is to integrate environmental considerations into all aspects of national development, to integrate environmental considerations into all aspects of national development. It also says at 111, part of the objective is to promote sustainable land management practices. Bearing those two provisions in mind, I would like to ask the minister to tell us, or perhaps his team or both, the extent to which he or they would be satisfied that planning approvals in Barbados give sufficient consideration to matters related to our biodiversity. The minister talked a lot about biodiversity. To what extent is he happy? To what extent is his team happy, those who have principal responsibility for these matters, that in terms of development planning approvals, sufficient consideration is given to matters of biodiversity? That's my first question.
I want to thank you, honorable member for St. Michael West. I want to let you know that within the next couple of weeks, months, hopefully, there will be a biological diversity action plan which speaks to the preservation of our natural fauna and flora. Because we understand the importance of biological diversity in the fight against the vagaries that we spoke of earlier. I want to say that, along with that, my department is also charged with land management and ecosystem management. Because we understand not only in Barbados, but in the world, every single year there is about a 10,000 hectare loss of land to this desertification. And Barbados being one of the 10 most water scarce countries in the world, we are not independent of this idiosyncrasy. What we are doing is that we are having that conversation right now to ensure that desertification is a thing of the past, that arid land is a thing of the past, and that we are now looking to regenerate using biological diverse methods, our forestry, and our degradation. But to further expose this, I would call on the officer responsible for natural resource management, Mr. Steve Devenish, who can talk about land-based solutions. He can talk about mangrove and the ability for us to develop our ecosystems on our gullies and to ensure that there is a biological diverse state in that type of development. Because more so than ever, we now have to look at biological ways to manage our ecosystems. Because if we continue using the industrialized and chemical ways, then we will be spinning top in mud as it relates to protecting our ozone environment. After him, I would also invite Ms. Kim Downs-Airguard, who is at the center of all discussions as it relates to wildlife, ecosystems management, forestry and restoration, and our biological diverse stock. So I will ask Mr. Steve Devenish to expound on the whole issue about land conservation, desertification, the management, how we can look at ways of reintegrating our hard pan sand soil in the Scotland district. And there are a lot of biological diverse ways. That's why the ministry have these interlinkages. So I will invite Mr. Devenish to respond.
Good morning. My name is Steve Devenish. I'm the Director of the Natural Heritage Department in the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. The question posed is an interesting one, and the ministry has been working assiduously over a period of time to ensure that there is, one, integration within national planning, and two, in our discrete project planning process and programming process, we focus and we drill down on specific sites. Our principal integration starts within the context of the physical development plan. And the physical development plan speaks to...
Madam Chair, if I may interject, yes, we do have a problem with volume. I'm not hearing Mr. Devenish quite clearly. And in the interest of time, I'm sure this ministry is quite focused on what falls to it as its mandate with respect to biodiversity here in Barbados. My question really is the extent to which, coming from the other side of the equation, the planning department, the approvals process, to what extent is the ministry satisfied that in issuing of those approvals, in the pursuit of the process around those approvals, to what extent is the ministry satisfied that the interests of this ministry are sufficiently considered and that in planning approvals being issued, biodiversity considerations are being sufficiently taken into consideration by the planning people?
Thank you, sir. The point I was going to come to is based on the physical development plan applications that speak to the natural heritage conservation, national park and protected areas are indeed referred to the ministry. They also refer to the Natural Heritage Department, and in instances where there's a more specific biological or biodiversity requirement, it goes to the ministry. And we therefore are allowed to comment on physical development plan applications. Plan applications are very often issued with conditions attached to preserve the environment, which are conditions that are developed and derived from the Ministry of Environment Interests.
So you're happy with the extent to which they listen to you?
Yes, we are.
All right. I just want to save the time of the chamber, ma'am, and permit others to get to questions which they may have. I just want to know the ministry is satisfied that the planning people listen to them.
And further to that, if I may, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, is that there is a Tree Preservation Act, and the dendrologist, the only one in the Western Hemisphere, he sits as part of that committee that determines which tree we can remove, which cannot be removed for their biological diverse purposes and for sustainability. So that is all part of the planning proposals going forward. So we do have a voice and a stake in what happens in terms of our planning.
Thank you, Minister. Ma'am, will you leave my second question? And it relates to the National Strategic Plan again. Part of the objective of which is to protect the island's water supply, including groundwater resources and waters in coastal aquifers, and ensure effective conservation of the island's coastal and marine ecosystems and living resources while improving their quality. And my question, therefore, is what is this ministry's assessment as to the impact on our marine-related biodiversity by coastal activities such as construction and other activities, especially when we start to think in terms of the coral bleaching effect, the impact upon turtle habitats and turtle movements, etc. What is the ministry's assessment as to the impact on our marine-related biodiversity by coastal activities?
I would let Ms. Lisa, Ms. St. House from the Environmental Protection Department answer to that question, but I just want to let you know that our water supply, groundwater, our marine environment, that those supplies are constantly monitored by the Environmental Protection Department, ensuring that the levels of nitrates, phosphates, other persistent organic pollutants, that all those levels are controlled and come within the range that is acceptable, both in not only in the marine environment, but in the, our natural environment on land as well. So Ms. St. House will be able to respond to the other issues that you raised.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Stenhouse, Acting Deputy Director for Environmental Protection Department. The government department that really takes the lead in terms of ensuring protection of the coastal environment in relation to construction is the Coastal Zone Management Unit. What I can say is that they are part of the group of government departments that are consulted by the Town and Country Development Planning Office then they are coastal developments. So from that perspective, it is indeed considered with each application on the coast. Thank you.
But does the department, I try to find out if the departments, the ministry and its agencies have any concerns as to anything that is happening in our coastal, in our marine environment as a result of any of the activities, reconstruction, tourism. Is there any concern of any significance that this ministry has? That really is a query. Okay, it seems to me that it's a perfect world out there and there are no concerns, and I'm not too sure that's the case.
As I say, honorable member, the department that is responsible, the EPD, they do regular testing, and if there are any red flags raised, the corrective measures certainly will be put in place. But Ms. House, as she said just now, that there are no major issues in terms of what we are seeing, either in the marine environment. Our nitrate levels are below the 0.0097 millimoles of a liter, or whatever they're supposed to be. We don't have any bacteria that is of any significance or any different in any other part of the world on our near shore, on the coastal line. There is no concern as it relates to any phosphates inland. So we are pretty comfortable thus far with the levels that we are seeing in this country as it relates to those POPs or any other harmful chemical that you would use.
This, ma'am, is not my third question. This is just for clarification. I remember not too long ago in this very house, I raised the issue as to the possible negative impact, the extent to which it was a reality on our coastal waters of the presence of a large number of ships anchored off our coast during the early COVID period, and the discharge of refuse and so forth into our waters. I remember that the minister responsible for maritime affairs and the blue economy was saying as well it was a concern of the ministry and that it would be looked into. And I don't know that we have had any further word on that. This is the type of thing that concerns me. I think the type of thing that will concern Barbadians. I am reassured to hear that it is a perfect world on our coastal environment as far as this ministry is concerned. But I really would like to know that the fears or apprehensions of Barbadians are totally allayed with respect to these matters. But I will press on. If the ministry says it is all fine, then it is all fine. My third question, ma'am, with your leave, and it has to do with the government's goal of having a fossil-free environment virtually by 2030, is it? Now, we have a fossil energy-dependent economy and way of life. Where we talk about transportation, where we talk about generation of electricity. But part of this ministry's remit is the area of refrigerants. And to a large extent, and this came very, very forcibly to my mind when we had the discussion about vaccines and our capacity to store and to use vaccines which required a certain temperature for storage. And we have a certain maximum capacity. But there's refrigerants, refrigeration, and other aspects of utility use in Barbados which are totally dependent upon fossil produced energies. And my query really has to do with the synchronization, the synergies between the policies outlined by this ministry and that goal of the government to move to this fossil-free environment, knowing that we have this high level of dependence on refrigerants, which is a part of this ministry's mandate.
Honorable member, I think that you would have graced yourself to pay rapt attention over the last couple of days to what was happening in the chamber, and you would have heard the Member of Parliament for St. James Central in his lucid presentation speak about what they're doing as a ministry to ensure that there is a reduction in fossil fuel by the year 2030. Our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint is interministerial. It is not one particular ministry, although the environment may be the focal point as it relates to our national determined contributions and what we are going to tell the world by 2030 as it relates to removing 1.5 billion tons or so from the environment. We have a lot of interministerial activities going on that will cause this to be realized. What is happening in energy in terms of the reduction in fossil fuel and the alternatives that we are being used, wind, whether it is wave or whether it is photovoltaic. That will take up a big chunk of the fossil fuels that we use as far as it relates to the change to those natural alternatives. We have in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy a trust to have the blue hydrogen, which is the green hydrogen, which speaks to the fact that you're now storing the battery storage will be from a natural photovoltaic or natural source, and the batteries last a little longer. And then there is the whole interest in the debt for nature swaps. That is that particular ministry. In our ministry, we look to control indoor and outdoor air quality by our EPD department, ensure that in every single sphere, including the August chamber that you are in, that the levels of carbon dioxide certainly don't go past the 400 parts per million as the recommended or the allowed level. We are ensuring in this ministry that we do everything, and that's why I say the planting of 1 million trees will act as an important carbon sink, because that is able over the period of time to extract from the environment 48 million pounds of carbon dioxide. So based on the collective trust of every single ministry in Barbados that works alongside, and the Ministry of Agriculture, because when they plant the hedgerow to protect the land from erosion, that is also forming a part of the tree planting drive and in terms of carbon sequestration. To talk about, so from that perspective, we are working and we believe that we can achieve this goal as a small island developing state and as a leader in terms of how we treat our reduction of our carbon footprint. In terms of the refrigerants, and you're speaking specifically about the hydrofluorocarbons, we have now bring our refrigerants in line to the international standard according to the Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention, which looks at the action plan. Barbados became signatory to that convention, and so far we have been able to keep a tight rein on all the activities in Barbados, because there is a small group of companies involved in the whole refrigeration aspect of that type of industry. So we are able to have quite good and tight control over the activities in that area. And along with that, we ensure that their disposal is done according to the international standards. So we do not really have a problem in Barbados per se as it relates to the refrigerants, the fact that they will escape to the atmosphere and cause damage to the ozone layer, because we have a tight control of the ozone depleting substances in Barbados. But to further elucidate on that, I will call on Mr. Ron Goodrich, who is responsible for ozone protection and climate change.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, everyone. Thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question. My name is Ron Goodrich, Environmental Officer at the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. Yes, indeed, the Ministry, in association with the Customs Department and the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, would have established a licensing system for the trade in Barbados of hydrochlorofluorocarbons as well as hydrofluorocarbons. Barbados is mandated to phase out the use of hydrochlorofluorocarbons by 2030, and we are on the way. There's a quota system established for the importers of these refrigerant gases, and every year that quota is reduced so that by 2030 we should have zero importation of harmful hydrochlorofluorocarbons. We have had training sessions for the Refrigeration Association and the technicians in Barbados. There are some alternatives that are available to the sector to use. We are transitioning to more climate-friendly, more energy-efficient, more ozone-friendly alternatives of some of these refrigerant gases, and the uptake in the industry has been good. We have partnered also with the Samuel Chapman Prescott Polytechnic and their training program there, and we provide equipment as well as a scholarship to those students who qualify at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology annually. It covers their tuition, and that's how we have at the ministry tried to meet our obligations as it relates to the Vienna Convention on the protection of the ozone layer and the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. Thank you.
If I may further to that, I think the time is right for a scientist in Barbados, because we're talking about the creative imagination of our people and the abilities of our people, and the fact that we have partnered with the Polytechnic. But at post-2030, this world now have to come to grips with a new substance, a new chemical that will be able to do the same thing as the honorable member of the opposition asked. Will be able to to form part of the cold chain, which is sub 70 degrees or sub 80 degrees Celsius as it relates to being able to store certain vaccines. And that is an important question, because I believe the time is right now for a Barbadian to be able to say, we are going to stabilize the hydrofluorophyllenes, or those new products that are coming on the market that will form part of the cold chain going forward. And the challenge is there for Barbadians to do it, because we believe we have that ingenuity and that DNA that we can say to the rest of the world, here Barbadian has discovered the new substance that will replace the hydrofluorocarbons. And that is the type of conversation we are having with Polytechnic and those chemists at the university. So I think we are on the right path as it relates to ensuring that Barbados has a space, a voice, and a face in the international sphere.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. James Central.
I'm much obliged to you, ma'am. Permit me to begin by congratulating the Honourable Member also for his very obvious passion and pleasure in the execution of the day-to-day responsibility of his ministerial portfolio. I have told him in private that which now I say in public, ma'am, that I have never before in what is now the beginning of my 18th year as a legislator in Barbados seen the kind of zeal that the Honourable Member brings to the issues relating to the environment, and I can only wish him the very best. I, ma'am, feel that there are two audiences, and I know the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has been on the precincts of these chambers sufficiently long that he too knows that there are two audiences, and carefully structured questions that take us down the road of hydrofluorocarbons, etc. Perhaps while they engage the passion of the minister, do not necessarily resonate with the general public as easily. And it is very important, I think, ma'am, for the general public not to be led down the road only of hydrofluorocarbons, but for the general public to be given an opportunity to hear the minister on some of the excellent aspects of his work in 6 short months. Work, ma'am, that touches all of us on a day-to-day basis as Barbadians, having a concern for the communities that we live in, and touches all of us as members of Parliament, having a concern to represent the best interests and the comfort of those people in the communities and the people, ma'am, who sent us to this place. So my question, therefore, ma'am, brings us in a position to a point where the rubber meets the road on the bread and butter issues of parliamentary representation. I want, ma'am, to engage the minister on matters, for example, relating to the teams of workers that I see on the ground in the parish of St. James, and more particularly, ma'am, in the constituency of St. James Central. I've seen it, my constituency, ma'am, includes a part of the parish of St. Thomas. And so I must say as well, I've seen it in the parish of St. Thomas as well. I see workers, ma'am, on the ground making sure that there is debushing being done. I've seen the debushing firsthand, ma'am, in areas like Seaview and in Holders Hill, etc. And I know for a fact, ma'am, that it has contributed to employment in circumstances where even despite the ravages, the best efforts of the, even despite the best efforts of the government, the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic has caused dislocation. So it has not only helped us in terms of the environmental aspects and the beauty and comfort of the people living in the parish and in the community, but ma'am, more importantly, it has helped us to offset and mitigate the impact of unemployment. Now, ma'am, I would like the minister to elaborate a little bit on this program and to indicate to the House what his judgment is as to how much longer this program can continue, what his assessment is as to what it has been able to achieve thus far. That is my first question. And I also link into that, ma'am, the desirability. I want him to comment on what I have as a personal desire to see or have access to more skips, because the work that the government, through this minister, has been able to achieve, ma'am, has led to others saying, look, we too want to play our part. And I have gotten calls from people saying, look, the community is going to do a cleanup, but what we want a little help with is to get skips. We want to be able to put the cuttings and so on and the clippings, gather them and put them aside so that they can be collected at an appropriate stage by the appropriate authorities. Access to those things, ma'am, like skips, are very important because we want to help people to help themselves. I hear and I understand, and I do not for a moment deprecate or depreciate the importance of a conversation about hydrofluorocarbons. But frankly, ma'am, nobody in the campaign spoke to me about hydrofluorocarbons. They did speak to me, though, about the quality of their community and the comfort of the community that they live in. And I feel we need to give the minister a chance to speak to that as well.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. James Central. I know that you know better than most persons that all politics are local politics. And I know that you will allow me to locate my conversation today to something which is also dear to me as a constituency representative, and that is the National Cleanup Program. What you're seeing across Barbados is a national cleanup that has never been seen or imagined by any government post-adult suffrage, being frankly and brutally honest. This program seeks to beautify, as I said before, Barbados must be the most beautiful place. Beautify entire communities. So whether it is the roadways, whether it is lands that are being, and I want to say today, and I'm glad you give me the opportunity to talk on this, that coming soon will be legislation that will be dealing with disuse or idle land. There's no idle land in Barbados. I believe that idle land is owned by idle people who don't understand the idealists of Barbados. That's the honest truth. And I think that now is ripe for us to start having that conversation with Barbadians as it relates to protecting the land which they own and ensuring that there is a level of aesthetics in Barbados. And so we will be bringing legislation to enforce and to ensure that land owners take care of their property. We have a unit in my ministry that will be responsible for assessing these lands, these disused lands, and hopefully with the ticketing system, and the paper is at the Attorney General's office as I speak, where if government has to remediate, that we will be able to be compensated. I have had enough talking on this issue. The time for talk is over. This is the action plan now, not the plan of action. And I'm saying that Barbadians are duty-bound to take care and have pride in their properties. But the National Cleanup Program marries itself to the whole notion, as you spoke to the skips and things, of the Clean and Green project. In my nascency at the ministry, I had an epiphany that spoke to the fact how beautiful Barbados should be. And so I brought to bear a project which embodies the entire concept of cleaning and greening. These skips that you talk about, and we are having a problem with community skips. That's why I say they will be replaced by community refuse hubs with doors that can open up, that are painted in bright, nice colors that communities can appreciate and have a psychological sense of understanding what we are doing. And that they can have a tangible step because they can come out and see it as a project and help paint these hubs and be a part of it. We are going a little bit further, Honorable Member, because we are going to be having bulk waste collections in every single community across Barbados. We have started this project in 7 communities with most of the backbenchers thus far, and they can speak limpidly about the response to the community and the transformation this Clean and Green project has made to the communities and the expression of interest across Barbados as it relates to beautifying biological conservation, ecosystems management, because that is all part of this cleaning exercise. But Barbadians have to walk with us in the journey side by side, not in front or behind, but side by side, because partnerships must become an important part of this conversation. You can't have sustainable development unless there are partnerships with communities. So in the same way you are saying that the community in your constituency may need a skip, the government is going a little further. We are saying not only will we ensure that you have a refuse hub, but we are ensuring that we have the skips as well. Prior to 2018, and I must say this, even if I catch glottal fry, prior to 2018, the Sanitation Service Department had 12 trucks. 12, a dozen. When we're talking about POPs, persistent organic pollutants, we talk about dirty dozen too. A dozen. And I will ensure that you have more than, that we service more than the 11 parishes. They may go to a dozen too. What I'm saying is that we, since we took over this government, I want to pay homage and tribute to the former minister who was responsible in leading the fight to ensure that trucks came to Barbados. Albeit the fact that he was able to go to the port and make sure that they come on land. I want to say that since this government come to power, we have 36 new equipment to service the communities in Barbados. The Sanitation Service Authority now has a hotline that residents and communities can call and be able to say, well, I have this garbage problem. I haven't seen my garbage being collected, and I want some action on X, Y, and Z. We have cameras now placed across Barbados. I would not say where. It will remain clandestine. So, and there's a program called The Minister is Watching. I say I'm not a voyeur. But I will be able to see those persons and this ministry who continue to disregard the principles of keeping Barbados clean and the whole notion of cleaning and greening. So, in the communities, we have the trucks now to service each and every community. We have a hotline. We are working with a program now so that every single person who understands WhatsApp and internet and all those things can go and with the press of a button know when the trucks are coming to your area. This is the type of interventions we have made since coming to power and to governance. And I want to say that in this, the Sanitation Service Authority, I opened up the recreational hall only a couple of months ago, sorry, a couple of weeks ago, because it was after the lockdown. And because when I first visited that institution, I was embarrassed at the state of the recreational facilities. And I want to say a heartfelt thanks to all members of the Sanitation Service Authority today, because they are the frontline workers who are out there in the fight with the communities against the spread of these mosquito-borne and other vector-borne illnesses. And they are the front line to collect garbage when persons are at their home being quarantined from COVID. And I have to pay homage to them today for a job well done. But the same thing that we are paying homage and we are paying appreciation for their good work, I want to say that we have to treat them good too. And so I was able to spend $160,000 or so to refurbish a hall, which is clean. It has all the provisions for recreation so that the guys at the sanitation can have a place.
Remember, you're moving
to
away
eat.
a little bit from the question. If we could
I'm
bring it back in.
I'm trying to land and saying I bring it local. So what I'm saying, all those things to say that this government will provide the community refuse hubs. We have skips now available because we are no longer squandering the public's finances. And I would like, I would invite the chairman of the sanitation to speak to other things, because right now we are in conversations with ICBL about having the insurance, medical insurance. I can go on and speak a whole day. No time
Please
is limited.
Don't. If we could have the chairman continue
Yes,
the
and
question.
I can talk about the arms that we're gonna put on the trucks to stop persons from being exposed to physiological damage that you will have to work harder as a doctor. But the chairman will speak on those things.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am, if
I was allowing the chairman to...
oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Good morning. I am Ramon Ali, Chairman of the Sanitation Service Authority. In line with what the Minister would have indicated, there's been a focus on first taking care of our workers. It included the recreation hall. I can actually update him and you today to say that that health insurance that he referenced will be signed off on today. An agreement has been made. This was a commitment made to the workers by the Honorable Prime Minister, which the Minister made sure was at the forefront of being effected and brought to land, as he would say, as soon as possible. The service improvements which he has described are being felt in terms of tangible data collected from our hotline. The reality is, we can say, based on the reports that we are getting, the average Barbadian is receiving the service which they expect from the SSA, and they've been able to deliver it in a meaningful, timeful manner. The reality is that there is a plan in terms of the authority to totally revamp our service offering and carry it to new levels in terms of what would be the expectations. The rollout carts and bin lifters to which the Minister references will be an addition which will see the safety of the worker being paramount, the collection of data to improve efficiency and delivery of our services, route optimization, and also to allow us the more meaningful push forward a recycling program. The reality is that that will bring to the fore a commingled recycling effort to over 100,000 households in Barbados. So the SSA is focused in relation of delivering an improved and efficient service.
Ma'am, I want to congratulate the Minister and the Chairman of the Sanitation Service Authority on that wonderful step of introducing health insurance. I believe it is historical and groundbreaking, ma'am. It is an idea whose time has come. So I entirely support it and congratulate them for this step. I, as recently as a couple days ago in my own presentation, emphasized the importance of dignity for workers, and so therefore I believe this is a wonderful thing. Equally, ma'am, the question of pride in the community that the Minister spoke to is something that I obviously endorse, and that is the reason why I led the question, because I think this is where the conversation has to go. Now, if there's a missing link in the answer from the Minister, it is perhaps how do we access these skips, because I want to be clear, is the Minister saying that there are now skips available? And if so, when he answers, could he bring some certainty to that question? And equally, if so, how best do interested citizens, and I'm sure they are not only located in the constituency of St. James Central, how do people access these skips easily? The other question I want to raise is the issue of the beaches. As I understand it, Minister, your ministry carries responsibility for the matters relating to the cleanliness of the beaches in Barbados. And I think the matters relating to vending on the beaches in Barbados also lies with your ministry. Am I correct in that regard?
You are.
Good. Now, I must say to you, as a minister responsible for business, that I have some concerns. The issue of where we are in terms of employment in Barbados, linked as it is to the challenges presented to this country by COVID-19, must be top of mind for all of us as Barbadians. I am not going to engage where the leader of the opposition went yesterday when he sought to question an unemployment figure, because we all know that the consequences of COVID have been dislocation, and therefore there's going to be some fluctuation as a result of this pandemic's impact on Barbados. That is basic common sense. But the solutions, ma'am, for people who are trying now to hold body and soul together and hold households together, as I said, for me, these are bread and butter issues. I'm not in here to talk about hydrofluorocarbons today. I am here, ma'am, to try to understand how we can help people who lost a job to be able to make ends meet. And if there is opportunity available, not just on the land space, but on the beach side as well, ma'am, once tourism starts to kick back in, we have to factor into the equation how best we can accommodate people there. Not now, when they're in tourism, but at the time when tourism starts to come back in. So let us think in terms of what happens when the season starts down in November. Gives you a long run-in, Minister. But you have to plan it. And my concern is this, that there has to be an opportunity for Barbadians to understand who determines the amount of people who can be beach vendors, and how are those numbers distributed. Because I must tell you, Minister, I have been in this business now, as I said, for over a decade and a half. And I can't get clarity of purpose and certainty of policy on how this thing works. Who determines that between the Hilton and Sandy Lane, there are X number of vendors? How are those vendors allocated permission to vend on beaches, on any given beach in Barbados? And ma'am, the last part of the question would be, is it not important, given the circumstances, for us to be having a conversation internal to the Ministry of the Environment as to how the ministry can partner with the rest of Barbados to make sure that there's more opportunity for people who want to live an honest life and ought not to be forced to do things that otherwise they would have to do just to survive?
Thanks for giving me that long run. I will make sure I bowl a legitimate ball and not a no ball. The issue with the skips, and I want to say to you that from the commercial end of the Sanitation Service Authority, that we have contracted persons to build skips, and we have, I can't give you the figure now, and probably the manager can speak to that, but we have more than adequate skips for events and for short-term purposes. The problem we have with skips, and now again it gives me the opportunity, that's why I told, I started my preamble by saying that I hope I don't bowl a no ball. But now is the opportunity for me to say to Barbadians that community skips are placed in communities for persons within that geographical space or that community. They are not placed there for persons to come with their trucks and offload in the skip when they are given jobs to carry the refuse to the landfill. They are not there for persons to put from bays, fridges, and all this commingled stuff in. They are there because at the point in time, there were some challenges getting the trucks prior to 2018 that were needed to service the communities. Now we have the trucks. We are saying that we are trying our best to remove the community skips, because the reality of it is that they're unsightly and they pose a health threat if they are not treated with the respect and dignity that they need to be treated with. So we are saying that we are going to replace most of those communities in communities where the trucks cannot traverse because of the small roads. And there's another problem that I can speak to too. There's a problem where Barbados park at the side of the road, and we have had numerous complaints from the truck drivers from the sanitation who refuse to move their vehicles to allow the garbage trucks to go and collect their own garbage. Now, I can't understand what is could be the more lucid and more translucent than that in terms of getting your garbage out, where you would be able to allow the trucks to come and collect that garbage. It really has befuddled me. So I'm saying is that these are the types of conversations we need to be having with Barbados, because it's a challenge from the Sanitation Service Authority. But I want to assure you that the skips are there for commercial purposes. We are now looking to move away from those unsightly skips to have community refuse hubs built with gates and proper signage so that the communities can bring can be brought to a level of beauty and aesthetics. That is what we are doing from that perspective.
Minister, before you move on, what about the skips within the parks? I have 2 major parks in my constituency, and it seems that the skips are always overflowing with garbage, and the pickup is not as often as I would like it to be. Is there a plan to, and it is unsightly from the main road, is there a plan to increase the pickup there? But
I would love to share with you and the entire Barbados the videos of persons going with trucks and offloading everything in those same skips. They don't have to pay skipping fees anymore. Persons ask them to move their refuse, and they're paid to do a job, but yet still they find a convenient way of offloading everything in the skips. Trust me, and the manager of both NCC and sanitation can speak on this. Because
you usually see a rise after, well, not so much now with the COVID, but a rise in the garbage in the parks after, for instance, a bank holiday where people are picnicking, and then it takes days for the garbage to be picked up.
But in terms of the trucks and the pickup, the manager of the sanitation can speak to that issue. I will give Ms. Janice Jones the opportunity to speak on terms of the pickups and the other operations where the skips and the garbage pickups are concerned.
Thanks.
Good morning, Janice Jones, Manager Sanitation Service Authority. With respect to the skips that are in parks, that is the responsibility for the National Conservation Commission. Sanitation Service Authority, we deal with skips that we have placed in particular communities. And the reason that we would have placed those skips in communities because of the unsightliness in the area. And in those communities where we have placed skips, we usually have a regular pickup for them. In some areas, for example, in Martindale's Road, opposite the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, those skips are usually collected on a daily basis. And in some other areas, they're usually collected twice weekly.
The manager of NCC to speak about the challenges and the skip collection for the areas of the parks and the beaches.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, Ryan Owls, National Conservation Commission, General Manager. With respect to the question about the removal of the skips, or the emptying of the skips, the collection is, on average, is once per week in the rural parishes and twice per week in the urban areas. We've had some challenges with persons who go to the parks and place their refuse in the skips, and it has caused some challenges in that it has caused us to increase our expenditure to remove the refuse from the skips on a regular basis, sometimes 3 times a week. We are hindered somewhat by our finances, but we try our best where we can facilitate to remove them as persons fill them. We often find that even on removing them the afternoons, by the next day, you find that there are some persons with their trucks or persons come to the sites and empty all of their refuse into the skips, usually construction debris or bulk waste, and we have to go the following day to remove it. Recognizing there are over 83 sites where we have to remove refuse, it is rather challenging to be doing this on a consistent basis. But we appeal to persons. I know the minister has cameras in some locations, and we appeal to persons not to come to the parks or the beaches and empty their refuse, but simply call the sanitation hotline, and sanitation would get to them and pick up the bulk waste, and to rely on the regular pickups. For those persons within the construction